no matter how much you prepare, no matter how many steps you take to prevent it, when you have tens of thousands of people walking through the gates of your theme park every day, injuries and illnesses are going to happen. One of the center points of every amusement and theme park's training is safety. You don't ever want anybody to come into your park and get hurt, get sick, have a bad time. You want everybody to have the most wonderful, perfect day that they can. You do everything you can to help keep people safe. And the truth is, there are a few places around that are safer than a theme park. Injuries are extremely rare. You're far more likely to get injured in your bathtub at home than you are at an amusement park. But with that many people around, life happens and things happen sometimes. One of the most common illnesses and injuries that we got to deal with was completely the fault of the guest, and that was not taking into account the weather and what they need to do to be prepared for it. It may be something as simple as wearing the wrong kinds of shoes when they're walking around in hills and a theme park. Yes, we would watch people show up wearing 6-inch high heels. Hello? But the biggest one that we dealt with actually had to do with the heat. People don't drink enough water a lot of times, and when you've got a hot day and a humid day, and you're not drinking enough water, you've got a big chance of being sick. And that's what we saw most of the time. By far the biggest thing we dealt with was people who were suffering from dehydration, heat exhaustion, simply because they hadn't been drinking enough water. They may have been overdressed for the weather, they weren't getting into cool places, and they weren't taking care of themselves. Oh, and did I mention they didn't drink enough water? Here's what happens when you don't drink enough water on a hot day. You get sick. We'd see it pretty often at Disney and Silver Dollar City, where people just came in and walk up to us and tell us,
I don't feel so good.
have you been drinking water?
Oh, well, I don't drink water.
Too bad. Go get some. In the train station in Silver Dollar City, we would actually lay them down on one of the benches, get some compresses from the snack bar that we have that was right there, kind of put those on their head, give them some water, give them some ice to suck on, and then call first aid, who would then have to come down and take them up to the air-conditioned building where they got to rest in air conditioning and cool off and drink more water until they felt better. It happened at Disney too, and not just to guests. Cast members would have that issue as well. I can remember one time I was shooting pictures of Donald at the Mexico Pavilion at Epcot, and all of a sudden Donald started to signal us that something was wrong, and as we stepped up and the guests had stepped away, poor Donald started getting really sick. You know, it's not fun when you watch a duck get sick. We had to help poor Donald off stage, and sure enough, Donald hadn't been drinking enough water and was so bad off they actually had to take him to the hospital for it. You'd think a duck would know better, wouldn't you? If cast members can do it, yes, guests are susceptible too. So if you go to a theme park and it's a warm day, drink water. It will help you feel better all day and keep you from getting sick. And of course, that kind of illness would lead to another problem that we would have sometimes, and that's, to use the Disney lingo, protein spills. Yep, that meant that somebody had lost the contents of their stomach. And it could get quite ugly. At Disney, because I was a photographer wandering around, I didn't have to deal with that. I would basically, if I saw it, kind of help block off the area, tell people to walk around. Hey, folks, look where you're walking. Watch your step. Please don't walk there. Go that way. And we would call in the custodians to come and clean it up. That was about as much as I got there, as well as trying to help take care of the guests and make them feel better. Now, at Silver Dollar City, because we were working on a train and on a ride, it could get a little more involved. At all of the parks I've worked, you were not allowed to clean up a protein spill unless you had special training. I know it sounds a little silly, but because it is bodily fluids and you do not know what that person or child has, they could be carrying hepatitis or something else, you don't touch it. Not unless you've got the proper gear, which could include rubber gloves to keep you safe, as well as the right equipment to clean it up. At Silver Dollar City, that could cause a little bit of an issue, though, if they were in the train station, because we would actually have to close off the train station, or at least a big section of it, to be able to clean it. Oftentimes, in between trains, that meant we had one conductor, and there was no way that the conductor could run the ride and clean the spill at the same time. That caused some issues. It would basically mean that as long as the spill was in the station, and we only had one conductor, we would actually have to close down the train, deal with cleaning up the spill, stop to wave the train in real quick so the guests coming in could get off, finish cleaning the spill, and then we could open back up. None of us wanted to do that. So we were always grateful when the area host came down. This is essentially Silver Dollar City's roaming custodians, and they would come down oftentimes when they would hear the call on the radio and help clean it up and take care of it for us. Thank you, area hosts. We loved you. Now, if it was on the train, well, then we were kind of stuck. We would close off those rows, and the cleaning process, again, would mean putting on rubber gloves to help keep you safe. We then actually had to take, it was like cat litter, and you would spread that on it. That would help absorb it, clean that off into a bag, bleach it down, spray that down again, let it dry, and it was quite an involved process. It could take a couple times around on the train before it would finally be ready and we could seat guests there again. It also meant having to take everything that we packaged up and walk it up to first aid to dispose of it properly so it didn't become a health hazard. Ew! Never fun, not for us, not for the guest. Drink your water. That was the most common thing that we had, but other injuries happened as well. If you've been watching my videos for a little while, you probably remember the story about the man who cut his head on the train. If you didn't hear that one, check the link up above. It'll take you to that story along with some others about things that didn't always go quite so well. But generally, if we had an injury, our rule of thumb was unless it was life-threatening, we were supposed to kind of help the guests get comfortable, clear an area around them so that people weren't bothering them, make sure that the safety hazard, if there was one, was cleared quickly, and then wait for first aid to come. They want to make sure that the people who were fully trained responders took care of it, unless it was a life-saving thing. An example of this is one time over at Half Dollar Holler at Silver Dollar City, which was right next to us. We shared a break room with them. We had this group of college students that came in for the summer, and one was a really nice nursing student named Lindsay. Lindsay had just been working there for a week, maybe two, and part of Half Dollar Holler actually has these climbing nets and tree houses that kids get to play in. Well, one of the kids was up there running around in there, and he slipped, went through the net a little bit, and broke his leg in the net. Yeah, real fun thing to have happen. Poor little kid is sitting there, obviously in pain, and what does Lindsay get to do? Well, as a nursing student, she basically knew immobilize him and keep him there until help comes. Hold him in place, try to comfort him as well as she could, and call for first aid and hope first aid got there in a hurry, which they did because we were right down the hill from them. Welcome to Silver Dollar City, Lindsay! We would also have occasionally people who would trip and fall, and they might hurt themselves that way, scuff up an arm or whatever. I never saw a big serious injury that way. The most serious injuries that I was aware of at Silver Dollar City, the two times I was really aware of them, I was actually working out in the robber shack, and so we just got to hear all the fun over the radio. That was always interesting. Silver Dollar City, the way they're set up, if they had to bring an ambulance in the park for somebody, it actually had to come through this back side road, and they'd have to close down the train because that road would actually cross over the railroad tracks. And the only way to get the ambulance in was to do that, and so we'd have to shut down and let the ambulance get in and out. So we always knew if there was something going on because we'd hear on the radio that we were getting shut down to let a vehicle come in. Okay, guess somebody got sick or hurt somewhere in the lower half of the park. That's not so good. The most serious ones we heard about, one was actually on our train, and it was an older lady who was getting on the train at the time. We're out in the robber shack, and we hear on the radio that we're shut down immediately, first aid dispatch immediately to the train station. Uh-oh, that doesn't sound real good. Turns out an older lady had been trying to get onto the train, had missed her step as she was getting up, and had fallen and done a face plant right on the loading dock. Ow. From what we heard, it was not a nice injury. They took care of her, first aid came down, but it took us a little while before we got opened up again after that one. The worst one I'm aware of actually wasn't even on our train, but it did happen to one of our train guys. He was actually working at one of the other rides in the park, one of the roller coasters. And as he's working, they're helping to load and unload the roller coaster trains. One of the other guys working with them starts not feeling well. Kind of an older guy, and he looks at my coworker and the others and says, guys, I'm not doing good. Can I sit down? And they notice that he's looking a little bit pale and flushed, and they're thinking probably not enough water. Sure, take a seat, have a drink, relax. We want you to get better because we kind of need you. Went back to work, a little short-handed, but they're okay. And then the operator up in the booth looks down and starts yelling because the guy had actually just keeled over. Turns out it wasn't lack of water. He was having a heart attack. Now, one of the things that all of the train guys are trained on is CPR and how to use an AED defibrillator. And it was a good thing because my coworker and the other gentleman immediately went to his aid, started CPR, got the AED hooked up, and they basically saved his life while he was working. That one became a little bit of a talk around the park for a while. The good thing is the gentleman did fully recover. He didn't make it back to work again at Silver Dollar City as far as I know, but he was able to keep on going and they got him taken care of the way he needed to. Those were the really big injuries that I dealt with and heard about. You would see minor ones occasionally, but again, injuries were rare. The honest truth about injuries at the theme park is 95% of them are the guest's fault, doing things they shouldn't, like crossing fences and crossing barriers, standing up on rides, doing dumb things that you shouldn't do. If there's a gate or a fence there, don't cross it. Follow the rules and that will keep you safe. And doing that will mean that we're not going to have to come to your rescue and do first aid on you and help take care of your problems that you caused. Obey the rules, you'll have a great time that way, and it'll save everybody the trouble of having to deal with injuries. Thanks so much for watching, hope you enjoyed.